BBC Radio Scotland.
I definitely wanted to be a songwriter of the old school type. You know, I didn't want my name in lights, I wanted them in brackets.
We were talking to a fella in the room last night. Came down from Elgin with an appetite. Somebody told him he would be alright among the million. He began to sing, he took the place apart, and he was dealing aces from the very start. It was a gift from heaven to a humble heart we were embracing. Oh, he told me that his papa was a rolling stone who had a gig at Dingwall, so he felt at home, and all he really needed was a telephone to be in business. Gales
On the 23rd of October 2012, Scotland lost one of its finest songwriters, Michael Marra, who died at the age of 60. Michael, the man and his music, was much loved, but as he said himself, the limelight was never his goal. As well as leaving a superb catalogue of songs embracing all aspects of life in Scotland, old and new, he was also a distinctive singer with his trademark gravelly voice, an actor, a playwright and an artist. I'm Janice Forsyth. Welcome to the Michael Marra Family Album. In this special tribute to the great man, we've mined the Radio Scotland archives for interviews and performances from Michael, and we thought the best people to talk about this very private man were those closest to him, his family. We'll hear from his wife Peggy.
Sometimes he would still be up when I got up to go to school. He would still be working. If he was really involved in something, that often happened.
His younger brother Chris.
Was going to London, getting the showbiz thing and rejecting it, that put him on the path he ended up on.
His sister Mary.
His nerve problems were about being himself, whereas as an actor and becoming someone else, I think, made it a bit easier for him.
His children, Alice and Matthew.
I just wanted to go and see what he was doing all the time. I just thought it was so exciting.
I had a little keyboard with preset rhythms, all that kind of thing. And I'd change the chords and he'd make up songs about my school teachers.
And their bandmates in the Hazy Janes, who Michael called his adopted bairns, Andrew and Liam.
Yeah, the most encouraging person I think I've ever met, really.
He would encourage us when we'd kind of gave up on things.
And his brother Nick.
His songs were like his other children. He guarded them and nurtured them. He loved them, as other people have done.
The courgettes.
It's unusual for a young child to know exactly what job they want to do when they grow up. Even more unusual when that job is songwriter. But it was the only option that interested the young Michael Marra, raised in Lochee in West Dundee.
There was a very strange thing happened when I was at primary school. A couple of the guys in my class were speaking and saying, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said I wanted to be a songwriter. And one of the other guys said, my uncle's a songwriter. And we thought, oh, there you go, but he's earning good money in Dundee. We said, well, and who is he? And the guy said, Stephen Sondheim. I hadn't heard West Side Story at that stage. This would be when I was at primary school in the late 50s or so. And it turned out to be true. So it didn't seem like a ridiculous thing to have said. I always did try to write songs anyway. I think most people do.
Over the years, Michael's younger brother, Christopher, collaborated musically, and it all started when their father brought home a new instrument.
I've no memory of Michael before I was about 12. I think it's because I'm 5 years younger than the rest of them, so to me it was just a sort of big phalange of brothers and sisters. I think it was only when a guitar arrived in the house and we both took an interest in it. That was when sort of Michael and I sort of started. Before that, I think we'd just been brothers, fighting and all that. But We were both really interested in the guitar, and that was when we started to get on with each other, really. When I was learning guitar and Mick was learning guitar, we were getting albums by James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, and we both fell heavily for Joni Mitchell, absolutely. But I think it was that we had the same taste as well. We liked the same kind of music. We liked ballads, folk stuff, but also rock and roll. I never got him convinced about Led Zeppelin.
The guitar came later. I learned a bit on that. But again, my wee brother is a professional guitarist, and I consider my guitar playing to be rubbish. I'm only interested in writing songs on it. My oldest brother, Eddie, taught me how to play Go Now. You remember it by the Moody Blues? The important thing about that was that he taught me in E flat. And E flat I've really enjoyed from then. I mean, I've written in all keys, but E flat seems like home to me.
Monkey hair has turned to fear and skirts the brow of passion's furrow. This she cries, let no man's lies move through my womb and add to my sorrow. God of plunder, God of ill, send my love to distant hill, all to raise his drooping shares, encasing my heart in monkey hairs.
Monkey Hair, one of Michael's E-flat masterpieces, which was also one of his own personal favourites. They're performed live in 2010 with Mr McFall's Chamber, an ensemble that mixes classical, jazz, even tango, ideally suited to Michael's eclectic writing. And that love of words was evident early on.
My father was a letterpress printer. He worked at Heidelberg Cylinder, the proper old-style letterpress printing. My mother was a school teacher. She was a primary teacher. There was a standard of badinage round our dining table, which was great fun.
He would ask you a question across the table, but what he was doing was he was kind of like throwing this wee bomb in, and then he would just drop his eyes and we smile, and of course either mum or dad would say, "What was that? What do you mean?" And yeah, lots of trouble. He was very, very mischievous.
Michael's sister Mary there, and that mischievous streak led Michael to be encouraged to leave Lawside Academy at the age of 14.
We prefer to think it was by mutual agreement.
Truancy, really, was what I was expelled for. I really have a big thing about controlling my time, which many people may have, but I'm a bit of an extremist.
He didn't like people telling him what he was to do with his time, that was his decision.
And I do not like anybody deciding what it is, even the topics that we're going to be thinking about. So that very early was a drawback at school.
Having left school and taken on a variety of day jobs, in the evenings Michael was starting to test his songs live at local folk clubs. It was at this time that Michael met Peggy, the woman he was to share his life with. Did he ever write any songs for her?
Apparently. Racing from Newborough on Gales Blue is apparently mine, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But he didn't like to write about personal things or himself or us. No, we were kept away from all that.
Pack a bag of your old embraces, feet tickling and pulling faces. Let's get it right. I don't know if it's cloudy or bright. Who cares? I'm happily unawares. Throw in one of your special smiles, the one that shines for 1,000 miles. Drive on the left and remember, honey, dip your eyes. Racing from Newborough Newborough through the night.
He was already a songwriter and a singer because I met him in Forfar Folk Club, where he did one of his very first gigs. I worked there, I was the barmaid, and he used to come in and leave his guitar. He was very timid. He didn't say very much when we first met, but we subsequently met in Dundee after that, when I went to college to train to be a teacher, and then we met again, and got to know each other then.
So there you are, training to be a teacher and subsequently, working as a teacher ever since, which is a great solid career. Any misgivings at all about hooking up with a musician?
No, none at all. I remember my mother saying how happy I was after I'd met him, so I think that was enough.
I think something that was really important for Michael was being original. He didn't want to do what other people had done. He wanted to be himself, and I think he more than achieved that. His originality, I think, is one of the hallmarks of his music. You couldn't predict what was coming next in his songs, and that's because he was a very deep thinker. He thought a lot about his work, and what came through was usually based on something he wanted to say.
Racing from Newborough to your side.
In 1971, armed with his songs, Michael the solo artist became a band member in a couple of local groups. His brother Chris was the guitarist.
Before Skeets Bolivar there was Hen's Teeth, which grew out of the folk clubs. It was pretty much a folk band, or sort of folk rock, I suppose you would say at that time. Myself, Gus, Michael, Dougie McLean and Arlene Gowans.
Skeets Bolivar evolved from Hen's Teeth and also from Mort Riggle and the Panthers. So there were some members of both bands and they came together as Skeets Bolivar.
How would you describe their music?
Skeets Bolivar. Rock and roll, was it? Well, Mort Riggle and the Panthers were definitely rock and roll. I mean, they had dancers that jived and all kinds of things. So if you merge that with the folky sound of Hen's Teeth, you get Skeets Bolivar.
Baby, I've heard so many stories about you. I've been wondering if any of them are true. Since I saw you disappear around the bend, baby, you made my life so pointless at both ends.
Shithouse Door. Yeah, we wrote that one afternoon, Michael Stewart and I, for a laugh. We went in for a competition and won a record contract. Now imagine the kind of record contract you win. It was basically rubbish. It was a big hit at the Edinburgh Festival, but we put out Street House Door as the first single.
I'd be up you like a rat up a drain pipe, but they say you don't love me anymore. I hear what all the guys are saying. They say you're bad like a shit house door, shit house door, shit house door. I hear you're bad like a shit house door, shit house door, shit house door. I hear you're bad like a shit house door.
It was basically to get a band who would play absolutely anything, every type of music, because that was what we wanted to do. We were learning. We would rehearse 5 days a week, so it was good practice and good grounding for moving on to other things.
After 2 singles with Skeets Bolivar, Michael Marra decided it was time to move on and concentrate on his own material full time. It was a friendship with another local singer-songwriter that was to lead to a solo contract with a major London record company, as Michael's wife Peggy explains.
We met Rab Noakes and got to know him. We actually spent our honeymoon in his house 40 years ago. And he introduced Michael to that side of things, to Barbara Dickson and subsequently Bernard Theobald. And he got his contract with Polydor.
She seems to have the Midas touch. She's posing mean stroking fingers. I just have to let it all go.
I was signed by Polydor because they had actually wanted Jerry Rafferty, but they couldn't get him. That's why they signed me. And I remember the first time that he'd said that, I thought, nah, I don't think so. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, well, it makes sense. And I remember Louden Wainwright maintains that he got his first record deal because Bob Dylan fell off his motorbike. And the more you find out about the music business and how limited their imaginations are, then, you know, these things are true.
It's the pain outside. It's running like a river rose. It's building up to an ocean and cruising with the flowing tide.
He didn't like the record company interfering with what he was writing or trying to tell him what to write, changing the titles of the songs, anything like that.
There's one called When These Shoes Were New. Now, when I was first married, we were living in a flat in Dundee. There was people above and people below, so there was no piano, but I had a guitar there. And I do remember finishing that song and saying to myself, this song will stand up.
When these shoes were new, it was how do you do. It was whiskey and a telling our
Eventually, when the publisher changed the title of the song to Take Me Out Drinking Tonight, which is the last line of the song, but it's not the most important thing about it. You have to beware of publishers doing things like that because they can do a lot of damage, you know.
I restored to my eyes what was clear and was bright. And honey, take me out drinking tonight. Honey, take me out drinking tonight.
Second album, we got most of the way through that, and then that got shelved through an argument between the producer and the record company, and that was basically the end of that. A lot of good songs on it, a lot of good players on it, and it probably broke his heart when it didn't come out. I mean, I think that was a big moment for him, to put all that work into something. Fabulous producer, fabulous musicians, great songs, and then it's shelved, and that's it, you can't use it. You know, I think that lack of control would be one of the things that spurred him on to just doing his own stuff. After that, Michael just came up to Scotland and started making records up here.
Taking the next train home, following lines that I followed before, taking the time alone. Honey, when you're leaving, would you close my door?
Well, he took it well, actually, because when you think back, it just wasn't him. It wasn't him at all. You know, glamorous photographs and hair done and everything. No, it just wasn't him. And it didn't last long. Well, he tried that, he'd done his best, and let's get on with the next thing.
A couple of years in the music business in London, I completely changed the way I worked and made an album called Gale's Blue, which dealt with Scottish subjects, which in the music business in London, if I used a Scottish word, they used to complain about it. And eventually it got so annoying that I wrote a song in order to annoy my publisher. It was called General Grant's Visit to Dundee.
When U.S. Grant paid a visit to my hometown, they spruced it up with a lick of paint, and he showed him round. 2 bands played in fierce competition as the rain fell down. The general said, what a mighty long bridge to such a mighty little old town.
On the record, it's actually dedicated to Randy Newman. It was heavily influenced by him. And that was because he had made a record called Good Old Boys. And it was what they called laughingly in those days a concept album.
Yeah.
You know, only pretentious people made such things. But he did an album called Good Old Boys. And he wrote with a thread going through the songs about Huey Long, an American politician. And as a piece of work, It definitely changed the way I looked at things.
They ran for their lives. We're well-trained little orphans, and a precious little song, said the general's wife.
The record company told him they didn't want any Scottish references in his songs, so he wrote a whole album of Scottish songs. I think that was how that happened. That's him to a T, actually. Yeah. You try to tell me what to do, I'll do the opposite.
Absolutely. He wasn't built for showbiz at all. I can't imagine him carrying on in showbiz the way I did and putting up with the people and the backstabbing and just the nonsense that goes on in it. He had no time for that at all. I remember somebody saying to him, you could write hit songs, why don't you do that? And he said, what's the point of being a rich loony?
Trews made of tartan, tight to the skin, with feather of eagle my bonnet was trimmed, and my hair tied with ribbon, powdered and pinned, when I was mincing with Shirley.
So, what is his brother Nick's favourite Michael Marra album?
Mine would be Gales Blue, because it was like nothing I'd ever heard before, and also different facets of Scottish life, and that quirkiness and the reflections of childhood, reflections on literature and so on. I thought it was excellent. I'm a bit biased, of course.
What was your reaction to Gales Blue?
I was annoyed that I wasn't on it there, but I was out of the country at the time, so I couldn't. I'm on the end of one track, but I thought it was fabulous. Personally, much preferred it to the stuff he'd been doing for Polydor, because it was very much Michael. I could only imagine Michael singing a lot of the songs. Also, from the historical point of view, just some things like Mincing with Shirley is a great sort of overview of what was going on at the time. No, it was good because it started Michael off as an actual Scottish songwriter as well.
When I was mincing with Shirley, Lord, what am I that I should be spared? Till the drunk dry.
Mincin' with Shirley from Michael Marra's 1985 album Gales Blue. You're listening to BBC Radio Scotland, the Michael Marra family album, with me, Janice Forsyth, and Michael's wife Peggy, his brothers Nick and Chris, sister Mary, his children Alice and Matthew, and their bandmates in the Hazy Janes, Andrew and Liam, who Michael referred to as his adopted bairns. Here are Alice and her brother Matthew.
I have lots of memories of lying in my bed and hearing him singing from downstairs.
There's history up to your knees. They've more stories than the baseball bats and Coke tins in the streets of Aberdeen.
I always thought that was really exciting, just that kind of being awake during the night and, singing. I think that's obviously where it comes from with me as well. Also my friends as well, they used to get really excited about it. They'd be like, is your dad in? Can we come round and sit on the stairs? And we'd sit there and listen to whatever he was doing, yeah.
Oh, I'd rather be in Elgin, it's a better class of cold and wet.
Like Alice said, sit on the stairs and listen. And but that's the thing I remember is going to sleep, and you'd occasionally get annoyed. Everyone in the house trying to sleep apart from him. But thinking back on it now, it was a very comforting sound. Just the piano from beneath the floor.
He delighted in Matthew and Alice.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yes.
He was just so proud. as a young dad, and then seeing them mature and become musicians themselves, he took great delight with his bairns.
The theatre proved to be another outlet for Michael Marra's creativity as a writer, composer and actor. Trips to the theatre as a youngster to see what Dad was up to were a big thrill for daughter Alice.
The whole theatre thing as well, I remember being taken to, getting to a sort of play on the set in the theatre, and that's definitely where my love of the theatre comes from. I just wanted to go and see what he was doing all the time. I just thought it was so exciting.
In 1986, it was a play by Billy Kay that presented Michael with his first theatrical endeavour, as his wife Peggy explains.
First one was the Fairly Mackie work at Dundee Rep. Alan Lydiard was the artistic director at Dundee Rep at the time, and he knew Michael's voice, and he imagined that voice singing songs during the play. So he asked him to do that. So he wrote the songs for the play and he performed them at the piano as the play unfolded. And that was the very first one.
Michael would go on to further theatre collaborations. He teamed up with poet and playwright Liz Lochee for their show In Fragrant Delicht. He wrote an operetta, If the Moon Can Be Believed, and songs for the Mill Lavies. The process was one he clearly enjoyed, as he told me in an interview in 2001.
The theatre are one of the very few people who will employ songwriters. Mm-hmm. If you're working in the theatre and you have to write a song, they probably want it by Friday. And that has always been a good thing for songwriters. Because if I'm left to my own devices, I'll take months and months to write a single song. Mm-hmm. But if somebody with a raised eyebrow tells me that they have to have it for Friday, I'd probably write the same song.
And there will be no abstention.
Oh, would that I had seen that day.
I think he really enjoyed it, that the theatre company would become your family for that period of time that you worked on a particular play or a show. And he liked that, yes, he did like that. But again, with the theatre, as soon as he got on the stage, if he was performing, it wasn't him, it was somebody else. So that was okay. And he liked the discipline of it. He liked the fact that you had to do things at this time and everybody did it. He liked that.
But it was an ambitious dance, theatre and music production with dancer Frank McConnell, which was to spawn one of Michael's most famous songs, Mother Glasgow. The show was called A Wee Home From Home.
One October night in 1938 in America, a grim voice interrupted the Radio City Music Hall with the following words. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. There's nobody in. It went on to say that Martians had landed.
Well, there were two. There was the character Frankie, and he was Frankie Fingers, and Frank was Frankie Feet. And Frank heard him singing in the Fairly Mackie work, and he decided he wanted that voice and those songs in his show. That was a great show. I loved that, Wee Home From Home.
In the second city of the empire, Mother Glasgow nurses all her wains, and working hard to feed her little starlings, unconsciously she clips their little wings. And Mother Glasgow's succour is perpetual, nestling the Billy and the Tim.
People think that Mother Glasgow is a nice wee song about Glasgow and how nice it is, where it is actually the opposite. And that the visuals which go with it in the stage production and in the film will really, I think, make people understand the song a bit more. It's not I love Glasgow, it's a wonderful place. It's a complaint about the marvellous gift of communication which Glaswegians have. It's been twisted, and I hear educated people still coming away with this religious bigotry in Glasgow. That's something that we know nothing about in this part of the country. In Glasgow, that comes over very obvious and clear to me. I hear it all the time. It makes you feel ill. And Mother Glasgow is actually written about that, the waste of great communication.
I dreamed I took a dander with St. Mungo to try to catch a fish that couldn't swim. For the tree and the bird and the fish and the bell. Let Glasgow fly.
Mother Glasgow, which was famously covered by Hue and Cry. Other singers to take on Michael's songs include Barbara Dickson, Frankie Miller and even Leo Sayer, who covered Hamish, the song about goalkeeper Hamish McAlpine from Dundee United, despite Michael being a Dundee fan. One thing that plagued Michael throughout his life was stage fright, and his fear was not just confined to his own performances, as he explains here.
I admire anybody who can walk across a stage. Seriously. Anybody gets up on stage and I'm with them, I want them to win. That's why I don't go to a lot of performances or gigs. I get so frightened for whoever it is that they probably would feel that from me.
I have to tell you, this now gives me enormous pleasure. I've got a pal who's going to come on and help me with the next song. Could you please give a huge Robert Burns country welcome to Patti Smith.
Flow gently, sweet Afton, among thy green braes. Flow gently, I'll sing thee a song in thy praise. My Mary's asleep by the murmur.
The Hazy Janes, comprising Michael's children Alice and Matthew, alongside friends Andrew and Liam, witnessed the legendary Marra pre-show nerves, and on one occasion Andrew thought he could offer some assistance.
It was before our show on Easter Island, and I'd witnessed it a few times, but I just thought, right, surely I can help him out here a little bit. So I went up to him, he's pacing, and I was like, just trying to take his mind off things. I was like, so Michael, I was reading Carnal Mechanics, your book, you know, and he just looked at me and went, gave me that infamous growl, and I just went, okay, and then I just literally walked away from him, and then that was me. I was then feeling nervous, you know, for the show, but it was pretty horrible to watch.
His daughter Alice.
He really enjoyed working with us, and yeah, I suppose that going out on stage on your own is pretty terrifying. But I saw him do it once at Fat Sam's. I saw him pacing just at the side of the stage, and he was just an absolute mess. And then it was like he just took a breath and he walked onto the stage in this really relaxed walk. It was just like watching a different person, you know. And as soon as he was on stage, he was absolutely fine.
My flocks and my Mary's sweet.
So once again, it was his wife Peggy who came to the rescue to help Michael battle the nerves.
In fact, a lot of people didn't quite understand, but in the last few years, we had a system where he didn't know that he had a gig until 2 days before. I had to keep it a secret, and I told him 48 hours in advance that he had a gig coming up. And lots of people spoilt it because they would say to him,
"You've got another gig coming up next month in Edinburgh at the Queen's Hall with Mary Campbell. This is another different area you're venturing into, isn't it?"
I didn't know about that.
I remember saying to Michael once, "Oh, I'll see you next week. I've got a ticket for wherever it was." And he went, "No, oh no, Mary, no. What's this about?" And he said, "Don't ever tell me where you're going to see me." He says, "I don't want to know." He says, "I don't know until a couple of days before the actual gig." He said, "Peg will tell me when I need to know." So I never made that mistake again.
And he reckoned that helped. The fact that he wasn't worrying for months and months and months about something that was coming up. He knew 2 days before.
Flow gently, sweet Afton, among thy green braes.
His brother Chris.
Michael worked with Patti Smith. They brought a certain mystery to the song and darkness to the song. When they did Flow Gently, Sweet Afton, to me it turned it into a murder ballad. You know, Flow Gently, don't wake her up because she's dead, I've killed her. Just the connection of the two of them, Patti Smith and Michael, were very similar type of artists. I loved seeing their take on the Robert Burns thing and how just the two different personalities could take the song somewhere else.
As well as writing and performing, Michael was also an artist, whose work includes the striking cover illustration on his On Stolen Stationery CD. Alice and Matthew would often see him drawing.
I think he started drawing as a way to pass the time before going on stage.
And the style of drawings he did with everything was this kind of, how do you describe that, Matthew?
I always thought it was very influenced by Picasso, that kind of cubist.
He would draw in like felt pens and like all these like in lines,
right, yeah,
like the way he coloured things in these really straight lines. Something to sort of focus on and relax, I suppose.
But if there was one project that was guaranteed to tickle Michael's funny bone, it was his partnership with the legendary King of Dundee Cool.
St Andrew and the Woolen Mill, the myth behind the legend. Yes, it was a wonderful sight on that first day of time when St Andrew, the patron saint of Scotland, his plans drawn up before him, embarked on his latest and most perfect of creations, the creation of the very woolen mill itself.
Carry the lad of this barn, born to be king. Over the sea to the sky.
He loved the idea of St Andrew. He really did, and he wanted to promote Andy's act. And he started writing songs for Andy. And there's a lot of fabulous songs, great writing. Perhaps you could call it the more outer field of Michael's writing, but to me he always wrote like that. It was always slightly mad.
Michael's brother Chris was very much part of the St Andrew project with Michael, and on New Year's Day 2001 I was privileged to have the great man on my Saturday morning radio show.
McLaddy, what is the story? This is the word on the page. Well, my name is St Andrew and I'm here to tell you what the story was then and what the story is new. I found myself by the side of a loch with a vat of wheat and a flask of hock. I looked around and I thought, it's rare to be alive, is it?
Cheers, folks.
Cheers,
Andrew's here in
I'll just have a
person.
wee vimto here, if you didn't mind.
Now the guys, because there are more of you than one St Andrew here, you've got your two backing musicians here, who go by the name of we've got on guitar and backing vocals Walt Slaughterhouse.
Indeed, we do. I love that. You're still there.
He's hell of a quiet. And on keyboards and backing vocals, Mitch Porgy.
Mitch Porgy, indeed, having a wee nap there. He's feeling a wee bit tender. He's feeling a wee bit kind of emotional and tired just now. But generally, they're doing all right.
St Andrew, I think they're frightened of you.
You know?
But anyway, we've got to whip them into shape because you're going to do 3 numbers for us.
Indeed, we are.
And your first one, Dinna Ask Me, I Dinna Ken.
Indeed, dinna ask me, I dinna ken. No point asking, because I'll no ken.
I'm going to perfect this accent by the end of the morning. Here goes.
1, 2, 3, 4.
A boy approached us the other night, asked if I could possibly give him a lick. Could have been applied to ask for land and say, dinna ask me, Chief, I dinna can.
It's weird. I remember things like the door going during the night, and I'd go like halfway down the stairs, and here would be St Andrew holding a large fish. That's my memory of him when I was little. They would work together during the night, and the laughter that you would hear coming from through the floor was just outrageous, wasn't it?
You'd always know when it was Andy on the phone as well. Roaring with laughter.
Roaring with laughter, yeah. But I think because we grew up with it, it was just normal to us.
Normal, yeah.
You know, people say, all this kind of surreal stuff, but it's just, to us it's just kind of normal.
The bull boy asked me, what's the day? Is it Pancake Tuesday or is it Hogmanay? Was the holiday fortnight now or then? I say, dinna ask me, Chief, I dinna can. I doot, he doesn't can. I doot, he doesn't can. Take it away, Paul.
My dad and St Andrew had a minor disagreement, and what was left of the pressing of the word on the pavey, he wanted to kind of do something with them rather than sell them, which seems daft. But what he did is he went up the old railway track in Newtile and buried them. And he gave me basically a map, a treasure map. It was written in rhyme to go and find them about a year later. I don't know what the reason for this was, but eventually went up there and found them, dug them up, and then they probably sold them after that.
I doot, he doesn't can. I Dopey diddly espelie. I would seriously doot that block Mick indeed can. In fact, what the Jan was. Ham.
With my hand on my heart and my heart in my mouth, we arms that could reach o'er the sea. My feet might be big, but the insects are safe. They'll never get stood on by me.
Now, a contender for the alternative Scottish national anthem is the Michael Marra song Hermless. His brother Nick was stopped in his tracks when he first heard it.
I remember being quite astonished when I first heard it, and I don't think anyone else sings it the way Michael sings it. There's a pathos in it that Michael brings to it when he sings it. It's quite a stirring song, and it is just, again, so Scottish in its outlook, you know. And I can remember hearing it and think, this is wonderful.
I send a 50, but 3 in the drawer, and something gets posted to me.
How important has Peggy been to Michael throughout his life and indeed his career?
We would not have one iota of Michael's work if it wasn't for Peggy. Peggy has supported him in every way possible, and Michael knew that. Michael knew that he wouldn't have achieved what he did if it wasn't for Peggy. You know, financially, Peggy has taught, and Michael was able to sit at home, write songs. Just the practical side of things too, you know, feeding him, because he wasn't a very practical person. She just looked after him in every way possible. She's a star.
Mascara in the pouring rain.
Michael had always been a huge support to his children Alice and Matthew and their band the Hazy Janes, although for drummer Liam, having the great Michael Marra in the recording studio could be a wee bit intimidating.
That booming voice coming over the headphones. I had to do a whistling section in one of the songs, and there was only 4 notes and I kept whistling one of the notes wrong. Did it about 5 times and I had a wee huff with myself. Yeah. Somebody else did it. I just hear, "It's got to be you, son." Over the headphones. I was like, right, okay then.
Michael got the chance to tour with the Hazy Janes in 2012, culminating in what was to be his last ever gig. Here are daughter Alice and bandmate Andrew.
We just got really excited about it, didn't we? Because I suppose when you've known all these songs for years and then you get the chance to kind of play them with him, you know, it was a pretty special thing. And I remember saying that to somebody, like, "What are you doing this weekend?" "I'm going away to play on some Scottish Highlands with my best pals and my dad." It's, yeah, not bad, not bad.
It was a full house in the rep. Michael was quite under the weather before the gig, but I can still picture him just striding out, you know, confidently on the stage.
I was very impressed by this, and I wanted to write a song about it, but I couldn't really find a decent angle into it. And then I decided that I would change things around a little bit, and I wrote this song about a hooligan in an art gallery. It's called "Ceci n'est pas une pipe."
I think he was actually enjoying being on stage with us because that was helping him through his condition, as it were. Obviously, we weren't aware at the time that was going to be the last gig, and everyone was just pulling together, you know, us and the audience, and it just felt right, you know.
If you want to go out walking, I will sweep the street. I'll scan the horizon for malcontents and less than heavenly witness. I'll be three men in grey suits, looking upwards and downwards and all aroundwards. I'll shield and protect you. I'm here to defend you. If you feel like dancing, I'll be by your side with a big band, a fountain, an aerodrome and moonlight. All will be well.
Having been ill with cancer, Michael Marra died on the 23rd of October 2012 at the age of 60, just weeks before what would have been his and his beloved Peggy's 40th wedding anniversary. All Will Be Well was written for his family and was played at his funeral. And for someone who spent his life shying away from the big time, there was a huge reaction to his passing, with many tributes and expressions of love and respect for the Bard of Dundee.
They stretch and I will fill your room. I'll be four girls walking backwards, casting petals at your footsteps. I'll be 8 majorettes playing trumpets and scowling. 16 old clergymen barking and howling. If you feel like dancing, I'll be by your side with a big band, a fountain, an aerodrome and moonlight. All will be well.
What do you think he would have made of the reaction and the public outpouring of love and admiration for the man and his work?
He would have been mortified.
Highly embarrassed.
Oh,
yes.
Really embarrassed.
You'd be horrified. Absolutely horrified, yeah.
Oh, complete embarrassment. Absolute. The biggest minter in the world, I would say. Yeah. It would embarrass him, but I think it's great.
Oh, I'm sure he would have been absolutely horrified, yeah.
For the family, we were in our time of sorrow. It was a great comfort to us, and all the messages that came have been a great source of support to Peggy, Alison, Matthew and the rest of the family. But Michael, I think, would have winced.
Oh, yes, double winced.
No harm will befall you while I live and breathe. While I live and breathe. All will be well. You may do as you please. No harm will befall.
If you could write a song for somebody and give them it as a present, it probably will be one of the best presents they ever get. If you're sincere and you make something for somebody and express yourself in that way, it can be a great thing.
I don't think he would have liked to have made the big time, do you? I don't think so. No, I think he was just happy doing what he was doing.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a wonderful night.
The Michael Marra family album was produced by Nick Lowe at Demas Productions for BBC Radio Scotland and presented by me, Janice Forsyth. Our thanks and love go to the Marra family.